one expanded the deep meaning of poetry into art, into literature, into music. I think is definitely almost our only hope now, because we see situations where facts cannot be trusted anymore, news cannot be trusted anymore, and so uh, you almost hope that when you tell a story, it hits a note like a musical note, which people understand and do not need to defend in a court of law or something. Something which to be true because you feel it. And people who, sharing stories is the earliest form of community building. So to write something which, the other day I was speaking at a meeting where a Hindi translation of a book I wrote about the debate between Ambedkar and Gandhi was being released. And I was saying, it's so sad that there was a time during the battle for independence where whatever you thought of them, Nehru, Gandhi, Jinnah, Ambedkar, everybody was able to write. Today, you don't have a single politician who can write a paragraph, It is so sad. Jantar Mantar is a place in Delhi where, traditionally there was first the boat club, then there was, gradually the spaces where people could come to protest have been closed down. And Jantar Mantar, until a few years ago, was a place where even I spent many nights of my life. All the great resistance movements would move through it. People would stay there all night. Now last year before last, it was shut down by the government, then reopened by the courts, but it's now just a shadow of what it used to be. It was a very vibrant, exciting space. Now it's sort of reduced to office hours, and you can come and you have police permission and so on. And of course, as in the book, Jantar Mantar was also taken over by right-wing protesters, pushed the poorer people protesting dams, protesting eviction, protesting privatization, slum demolition. All of them were gradually moved out, and a more well-heeled, sometimes further to the right of the government, or this big anti-corruption movement that eventually, to my mind, really burned through the idea of people's movements, took over that space. And today, it's a great pity, and I hope we get it back. When I wrote The God of Small Things, also there was a search for language. I've actually written I did a lecture in, called In What Language Does Rain Fall Over Tormented Cities, about this search for language to tell the stories from this part of the world. So when I wrote The God of Small Things, one had to imagine that book in two languages. Not because I wanted to translate from Malayalam to English, but because these two languages exist side by side where I grew up, And so the English had to be inventive in the sense that it had to contain Malayalam, which is the language that I spoke while I was growing up. Now, when you come to Delhi, actually we exist in all these languages every day, and the great sort of crusade by the Hindu right here to say one language, one religion, one country, it's just complete bullshit. It's a complete crap, So we cannot do that. We are a ocean of a people. We have thousands of dialects, languages, and you cannot actually browbeat people into into reducing the vocabulary of a culture that has such an ocean through which it swims. And in the ministry, it was really very interesting because, of course, now it's been translated into something like 51 languages. And in the Urdu and Hindi translations, we had so many interesting conversations about how parts of the novel were returning home. Then parts of the novel, the Hindi translator had to retain the Urdu idiom in the parts that have to do with Anjum and Old Delhi, and which are the parts that then you use a different idiom of Hindi. It was really fascinating. And to me, this book, as well as its translations by its own characters and by translators who translated it after the novel is written, all of it somehow belongs together in a universe. Well, I don't ever make rules for how writers should be. Like I think all that they should be is good writers. Whether they are dangerous or whether they are writing about the private life of goldfish, they should do it well. But I think that when you see, like, let's say you see what's happening in India now because the elections are happening, politicians and people who are involved in this process of asking for votes from people are beginning to be, it's impossible for them to say something that they worry about as being unpopular, So who is going to tell that story and not worry about not getting voted for? It has to be us. So in a way, to me, although yeah, I mean, they sell a lot, but the idea is not to be popular. The idea is not to say the things that everyone wants to hear. And about Kashmir, one has to be very careful here. I have been, of course, I've been attacked and I have been recommended for being used as a human shield and all of that in Kashmir. But at the same time, I think that there are plenty of people here who are beginning to understand that you can't have separate moral standards for yourself and for other people, And when I talk about Hindu, Muslim here, you must just translate it for yourself as majoritarian and minority, So the question is, how is any society dealing with this minority? Because otherwise you can just, if I'm considered an anti-national, which I am here, there are people who shout slogans at me saying Arundhati Roy Gaddar hai, Pakistan ka yaar hai. My point is that अगर मैं वहाँ होती तो वहाँ भी मैं गद्दारी होती.